Hey guys, welcome to Game Changers Podcast. My name is Harsh, and today I have Suki and Jaden with me as hosts. I'd like to welcome Akeem HAYNES on the podcast. Thank you for coming on. Akeem is an Olympic medal winner, but I let him give a little bit of an intro about what he does and his background.
Pleasure to be on today, man. I'm looking forward to this, man. So I've been to two Olympics, got a bronze medal in 2016. I've published two books, but four is done. And I am involved right now in what I believe my life's work is and what God put in my heart, and that's to speak life. But if you want to talk about a professional name, it would go down as a motivational speaker.
Great. So, obviously you've been, we're all in isolation, right? And right off the bat, with our theme being inspired through isolation, I want to know from you in terms of how are you staying inspired through isolation and even how are you staying fit because you're an athlete. So how are you maintaining your fitness in these tough times?
Yeah, man. So when I retired from sport in 2017, I wanted to make sure that I would still be in good shape for the future. What I mean for the future is, when I do have kids, I want to be able to go outside and play with the kids, right? So it's in my nature. So for me, when I wasn't in the gym as much anymore, I didn't need to be squatting 500, 600 pounds. I didn't need to be cleaning 315 pounds. So I dialed back and just started doing a lot more body weight stuff. So for me, some days, even now to this day, I'll do anywhere from 300 to 900 push-ups. I'll do different varieties of it. I'll do core, but there really isn't no excuse not to physically get yourself in some type of shape. You don't have to have the six pack. You don't got none of that, but you can always do something. Just use what you got. So that's how I stay physically in shape during this time. But I've been doing this for 2 years, 3 years now. I also go for walks. Even though we're on lockdown, we can still go for a walk. On the solo, on the double if we need to. But also me, I'm a person who it doesn't take me a lot to get motivated or inspired. Like I wake up when I feel down. I wake up and I think about, man, I just woke up in a bed. How many people in the world get to say they can wake up in a bed, especially where I know that I came from? So for me, I said I always make a list of things that I want to do that day. I don't always accomplish the 9 things that I may write down. However, I target it for the most important things that I want to get done that day. If it's 4 main things, that's a win, right? So many times we get so caught up in finishing everything, and if we don't, that we think that day we took a step back. But more times than none, when you're in a position of stillness, like we kind of all are, it's important to be productive and not always busy.
100%. And Akeem, you actually have this quote that I have here that you're familiar with. And, it reads, if you want to change things in a big way, then you got to make some changes you got to make some big changes in a small way, right?
Yeah.
And, I believe the first step in making those changes is, altering your mindset and your outlook on what's going on around you, right? And, you just briefly kind of touched on that as in, working out and, making sure you're still able to, play around with your kids in the future. And, you had that outlook and mindset at such a young age where at 13, you talked about how you stopped feeling sorry for yourself and, owning your story and where you were at that stage in life.
Yeah, man. So when I was 13, man, that was a pivotal age and point in my life, man. I was walking home one day on a normal school day, walking home in the middle of wintertime. And I'm walking home and I get to my house, man, and I notice there's 3 different garbage bags there. I get a little closer to the garbage bag and I said, man, that's my hat. I said, that's crazy. That's my shoes. That's my socks. It didn't really make any sense to me. I see my mom coming down with another bag in her hand. And she says, Akeem, go upstairs and get your stuff. I said, Mom, get my stuff. What do you mean get my stuff? She says, Akeem, I just need you to go upstairs. Don't talk back. Just go upstairs and get your stuff. I said, Ma, it's wintertime. Get my stuff and go where? And at 13 years old, man, I had 2 bags in my hand. I had a backpack on. My mom had 2 bags in her hand. And we were walking to the bus stop. At 13, we became homeless. And one of the things people ask me all the time, man, and say, man, being homeless, man, that must have been crazy. Like, that must have been so tragic. And that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was telling myself that it was going to get better each and every single day. You see, it's one thing to experience something. We all have these different experiences, but how you elevate from that experience is binded by what you say to yourself in your heart. Whenever people ask me about the entrepreneurial route or what they should take and what they believe they can do, I say, man, you got to believe it in your heart of hearts before you can even take a step at it. And when you believe it in your heart, it's that internal belief. I'm not talking about the surface level stuff where people say hard work pays off. Yeah. But do you really believe that pays off? I remember coming to Canada and I saw this thing on TV, right? And the thing that I saw on TV was this lady was falling from a skyscraper, right? And right in the nick of time, like Superman come. I had never seen any superheroes ever in my life until I came to Canada. And my mind was just like, man, if this lady was saved in her time of chaos, then that must at some point like happen to me and my mom. 3 hours went by, 4 hours went by, 6 hours went by, 8 hours went by. And I realized, man, ain't no Superman coming, Akeem. And it was at that moment that I realized, man, that if anything was going to happen in my life, if any goal was going to be achieved, if any dream was going to be reality, I had to be the one to put things into action. I couldn't wait on anybody to come and save me. I couldn't wait on somebody to give me some advice or to tell me that I was enough. I had to believe in all of those things every single day in order to pick myself up and to keep pressing forward, man. So it was at that moment at 13 that I said, man, whatever comes my way, I'm going to deal with it the best as I can. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to find a way to extract the good, because I'm a firm believer that if a person can find a way to extract the good, then they can apply it in a stage of their lives when they need it.
Yeah. How did changing your perspective, how do you do that in everyday life? Like something goes wrong, someone cancels on something. How do you always focus on changing your perspective and make it seem better?
So when something happens to me, man, I have to ask myself, is it out of my control? You can make plans with someone and they can cancel on you last minute. That's out of your control. You can only control showing up at that time and being there when the time is supposed to be. That's your part. So that's the first thing I would say. If it's out of your control, then you have to not worry about that. Don't take it so seriously. We can only control a certain amount of things that in this life, and that's usually what we can see in the possessions that we have. So for me, the first thing that I would say, man, I didn't worry about what was out of my control. I could control how I thought that day. I could control what I did that day. I could control how much I prepare for what's to come. It is in our everyday preparation that we can control that when the opportunity comes, man, we have a better chance of seizing.
Awesome. Definitely agree with that. And it reminds me of like this thing that one of my mentors has taught me, and it's about, 4 things. You know how people say like, oh, they did this to me, or they made me do this, or they made me feel this way. And it kind of taught me that there's 4 things that all of us have in common, which is it's up to us to feel to feel how we want to feel, to do what we want to do, to think what we want to think, and to say what we want to say. Right? These 4 things are completely up to us, without external, influence, and it's up to us to do these things based on what we want to do, and no one can affect them. And it's up to us to take it as a responsibility to say, hey, this is my power, and I can't give this to someone else.
Yeah, man, that's spot on. It's take it one step. When you hear the word self-esteem, it stems from us. We control our self-esteem. I'm not saying people can't put some words and some thoughts into your head by trying to tear down your self-esteem. Man, my grandmother used to tell me, man, she said, Akeem, if someone doesn't take the time to get to know you, then why should you ever care what they say? That always stuck with me. Smart woman. She's a smart woman.
Fantastic. So, going from there, kind of want to talk a little bit about your background, but not on a personal side, but more of a professional side as an athlete, and what that journey looked like before obviously your big break in Rio, but what that process looked like to you, if you have some stories to share about that.
Yeah, man. So track and field and football were basically my main 2 sports. And I really only did track and field because my coach at the time said, man, it would get you faster for football. Didn't really care about track and field per se. I just, track and field is everybody's punishment, right? You do something bad, you got to run.
You gotta run.
You got to run.
10
And
laps. Give me 10 laps.
Yeah. And I was like, man, I don't want that. But it wasn't until the 11th grade when I started running well, and I started to become top 3 in my age group in the world, that I realized, man, this could get me somewhere. My sole mission in sports, especially in track and field, was to get my education paid for. I didn't even know much about the Olympics. I had heard about it, but it didn't really hit my mind. But then when I started to dial in on it, I said, man, I can get my school paid for here. And the faster you get, the more money they're going to throw at you, the more opportunities are going to come. So I said, man, I got to make sure that I cultivate this one thing as best and as sharp as I can. And the one thing that helped me get there is I was willing to do what other people wouldn't. You see, many people say that because it sounds good. Man, hard work, man. I'm a hard worker, man. I'm always on the grind. I'm always, yeah, but are you on your grind when you don't want to be on your grind? Meaning the days where you wake up and you feel sore, what's your first thought? What are the things that you are going to do that is going to separate yourself? I always knew that when I wasn't working, Australia was up, like China was up. Somebody else, when I was sleeping, was working on their craft, and I was taking 8 hours off, 6 hours off, whatever time frame, however you sleep. And I said, man, I have to be able to make that up. So it just depends. I tell young athletes all the time, you can't worry about, the question you have to ask yourself is, what am I willing to sacrifice to get to that goal? I was willing to sacrifice certain social things. I didn't really go to parties much. I didn't really hang out with too many people. If it wasn't conducive to me getting this scholarship and was going to help me in my races, I just didn't mess with it, because the purpose and the reason was bigger than going to these things for me. At least for me, that's how I was. Right. So early on, man, I realized that, track and field or football was going to open up some doors for me. So, I had to act accordingly.
For sure. So, and I think you touched on a couple great points, especially about sacrifice, because people usually see, what, like they see the success, they don't see all the hard work, they only see the tip of the iceberg. And I think, obviously, as cliche as that sounds, but it's really true to the bone, because like I always say, like, if you want to be like the top 5% in the world, then you can't behave like the 95% of the general population.
Absolutely.
Right? If you're doing the exact same things as them, then how can you expect yourself to be the best of the best, right? And especially with sport, like sport is extremely competitive. Like there's like athletes everywhere all over the world, and to be the best of the best and be chosen to represent your country, it is a really difficult task. It requires years and like maybe 15 to 20 years of training just to get to that point where you have an opportunity to be selected. So you can't slack, you can't give in any way, and you really have to stay focused.
Yeah, man, it's I realized that in order for me to have gotten that scholarship, man, it was a 1.3% chance. Doesn't happen. But I knew that. When you know what you're up against, setbacks are going to come. Delays are going to come. Redirections are going to come. You should expect that. But the question that are you going to ask yourself is the reason why you want to achieve that goal going to be bigger and enough motivator to get you past that point?
Exactly. And it's not even about, because with these challenges, they're going to push you so you succumb to the universe. But it's about, you chasing your dream and getting the universe to adjust to you and to make you successful. And, overcoming every single adversity, every single challenge you face, so you are able to fulfill your potential, right? And that's what you did.
Man,
like
100%.
That's what happened. Like you ended up fulfilling that potential that you had because you got selected to go to Rio Olympics as part of a 4-man team for the 4x1. I think it's 400 relay race. I think that's what it's called. 400 meters.
Yeah. So in 2012, I made my first Olympic team. I was 20 years old, and I went over there, and I was partially like just for the relay during this time, and I didn't get to run. But in 2016, when I went to Rio, I ran the Open 100, and then I ran the 4x1 as well too. But this games was a little different. And the reason why I say it's a little different is because when you first initially get into something, whether you're an athlete, whether you're an entrepreneur, whatever it is that you're doing, the first time is going to be a learning experience. Regardless if it goes well or not, that is a learning experience. But the more you do it, and the more you get into a different stage, this was 4 years later. I was 24 now. It wasn't just a learning experience. It was time to handle business, right? That's the shift that you have to make. The better that you do something, the more that you do something, you need to get to a point where you believe that you belong there. Any room that you get into, you belong there. It's not by fluke. There's a certain amount of things that you did to build up to this time, but is the opportunity. Don't act scared. Everybody is scared. The Olympics, man, I'll never forget, man, going in the call room as we're getting ready for the relay, right? This was the latest race I'd ever been in, man. It was like 10:30 at night, and I've been yawning for the past 15 minutes. I'm like, man, this is late. This is late.
And it's the final event too.
Final event. So
everyone's waiting.
Man, there was at least, if I had to say, man, maybe 50 million people watching that day. And we're in the call room. Canadians are there, America's behind us, Jamaica is to the right, Trinidad is in there, the Japanese, the Chinese. Like, man, this is loaded. But everybody's scared. But everybody's also prepared to handle those emotions. And it's just a big poker game. Every person that you see is putting on a front, and it's the person that holds their composure the most by trusting their preparation. Those are the ones that usually succeed. People think nerves is such a bad thing. No, nerves is good. Why? Because it means you care. When you don't have nerves about something, you should probably be worried, and that's probably not what you should be doing. So we get into the Olympics, and we're getting to the call room, and we get to the track. And I'm walking down the track, to head to the start line. And one of the things I remember was how quiet it was. That's an oxymoron, right? Because you're expecting all this noise. Don't get me wrong. The crowd was screaming, but it was so quiet because I was so focused that I heard people saying Canada, 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 Canada. But all I could hear in my head was, Akeem, when the gun goes, you go. Don't think too much. When you're facing, and this is good for the athletes listening to this, right? Like when you're faced in a pressure situation, don't try to do nothing new. Because when you try to do something new, something bad happens. When you're in a pressure situation at a big game, maybe you have a big talk coming up, whatever it is that you're trying to do in your profession, when you're in a pressure situation, do what you've been doing. Trust that you're ready to seize the opportunity. And it was at that moment that, when we were walking down, I said, man, it's now or never. It's not time to back down or to overthink. Now it's just time to let your body do the work. And you just shut off your mind and let your body take over.
Mm-hmm. So what was that experience like? Because I know this is more like towards the fun side of a conversation, but I'm curious to know. Obviously Olympics, it's a whole different level it's the biggest sporting event in the world, watched by millions. Even the live audience, like watched by hundreds of thousands of people. What was that experience like when you just looked up and people like Andre DeGrassi on your team? There's Usain Bolt that who's doing the same race as you. So I guess that entire experience, I'm just curious to know, like, what would you describe it as?
Well, man, from the outside looking in, it seems like, man, all these athletes, all these great people. But if you're a wrestler, you've been wrestling all the great wrestlers. I've been racing all of these sprinters. Ain't nothing changed for us but the title. But from the outside looking in, everybody's like, man, they're all there. Nah, like we saw these guys a month before the Olympics came. Like, so you can't dodge these people. But what that experience to me, man, is, look, it doesn't matter what you run. It doesn't matter how you performed. All that matters is what you do on that day. times don't matter, what you've done in the past. None of that matters, how far you've jumped, how far you've thrown. All that is cool. But can you do it on that day? So the Olympics, it's more of a business trip. The reason why I say it's a business trip, man, is you don't really get to see all the sights and sounds of each city during that time, of each country. What my schedule would look like, I got up in the morning, I would go to the cafe and eat. I would go back, get my stuff, go to practice. From practice, I would come back to the village and I would just chill out, because you can't really do too much. You got to make sure your body is ready to go. It's the Olympics is a mental battle, all mental, because you can psych yourself out by seeing your opponents and who you see all the time, but also the distractions that come with it, because now you're having family members hitting you up like, hey, I just got here to so-and-so, where do I go to get my tickets? And you don't want to worry about trying to sort everything out and try to prepare for the biggest race of your career. You don't want to do none of that, but you kind of have to. You can't just dodge it. You got to be able to control which energy you put in, how much energy you're putting forth to each person. Then you got to get out of your own head and get your mind right. If you're doing multiple events, okay, what if your first round didn't go so well and you didn't advance, but you got another race coming up? How do you stop the thinking of that one and get ready for the other one? You got to have short-term memory at the Olympics. You can't dwell on certain things too long, otherwise your performance won't go well. So you have to mentally make sure that you're sharp and you're aware of where you're putting certain energies in order so you can be the best that you can be at that time. The Olympics is a whole, like a big roller coaster of emotions, right? Because you feed off everything. So you really got to make sure that you're controlling your energy, man. But the experience of it as a whole is probably something that I'll reflect more down the road when I'm a little bit older, because when you're there, it's just go, 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 go. Make sure you're ready. Make sure you're this. Make sure that. Make sure it's that. But when you feel like you're prepared and ready to run fast, it makes the experience that much sweeter, because it'll mean that much more to you, because you know that you were sharp and you were at your best.
So walk us through that race.
What's that?
So walk us through that race, because I know for the viewers, like, we're gonna have the race running on the side on our video, but I want you to walk us through the race and what you're thinking, what you're feeling while that clip is going, because I think that's something else on its own.
All right, man. So I'm at the start line, and I'm thinking one thing. I said, when the gun goes, you got to go. That's it. So I get down. The starter says, "On your marks, set." I'm in my set position. Now, usually when you're in a set position, the starter goes on your mark, set, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, gun goes. This man was holding us for like 5 Mississippis. Like, my hands were shaking. And I was just like, oh crap, I'm gonna fall. That's what I'm thinking. And the second that I said that, I was pushed forward a little bit, and the gun went, and I was like, wow, that's perfect. So the only thing that I was thinking was, man, I gotta get a big enough lead to pass the baton to Aaron so he can roll out, because America's below us, Jamaica's below us, like, they're coming. So I made up a stagger with the Trinidad team, and I said, man, I called stick, I saw Aaron's hand, boom, my part is done. So I kind of just squat down, and I'm just like, okay, man, now it's on everybody else. You got to trust your team. And Aaron ran a wicked leg. He's high stepping. Aaron's tall, but he's powerful. And I said, okay, he's there. Brendan gets out. Aaron passes the stick to Brendan. Brendan runs a wicked corner. She's high stepping the whole time. I said, oh man, we in good position. And then I see him and Andre's exchange. I was like, oh crap, Andre left late. I said, man, that's not good, right? Because you in the relay, you have to trust your teammates. And it was at that time, it's so easy to get distracted, because you are not only trying to call your call, whether it's stick or baton or pass. Every country has a different one, and you got to make sure that you call that at the right time and hit their hand. So I'm watching the last exchange, and I'm like, man, Andre left late. I said, man, we already gonna be behind. But he ran a good leg, and I remember watching it from the side. The closer that he was getting, Jamaica was ahead, and I saw Japan, America, and us. And as I was watching that, and I saw the line, I couldn't really see what we got, because all I could see was us and America cross at the same time. Andre ran a wicked leg, but I still didn't know what to see. I didn't know. I couldn't see. So I met the fellas at the line, and we're looking at the scoreboard, and we see Jamaica first. I think they ran 37.3. And then I look up, I see Japan. Japan ran 37.5 or 37.60, something like that. And then I see America with 37.63, and then us at 37.64. And I remember looking at the rest of the guys, and I said, man, this kind of sucks. We had just broken the Canadian record. That record stood for so long. Donovan Bailey, Bruni Sur, and Robert Esme, and Glenroy Gilbert had the record. Glenroy Gilbert was our relay coach, but it still sucked. And the reason why it sucked, man, is because when you go to an Olympic Games, it's cool to be there, but it becomes so much more memorable. Your only goal is to get a medal. It feels so much better. It feels like it's worth it when you get the medal. That's just the mentality that every athlete is thinking. I'm here to get the medal. I got to get the medal. So we're walking up, and we're doing interviews, and like nobody wants to do the interviews, right? And we're doing the interview, and all of a sudden, like, we get a tap on our shoulders. And I'm looking back. We're doing a live interview, right? Like a live interview. So they're seeing everything. And I get a tap on my shoulder, and he says, man, I think you guys may have gotten bronze. I said, man, stop that noise, man. What are you talking about? The board says fourth. Like, he's like, no, like, that's under review. And so we're watching the board switch from us in America, and it swaps. So we got moved up to third because America had passed the exchange out of their lane. That changed everything. Because we got the medal. That's all we wanted to do, was get the medal. Breaking the record was cool, but getting the medal solidified everything. We came here to accomplish this goal. So that was basically the step-by-step in my thoughts during that whole time, man.
For sure.
That's amazing.
And so, training for so long, and then, finally achieving and getting that medal with your team, what's your first experience? What goes through your head at that moment when you hear that?
Well, man, I was first upset about the individual 100 meters. You know what I'm saying? So I was a little upset about that. It didn't go my way. But it felt good to get to a position where you could compete for a medal. Some athletes only have one event, and their event doesn't go so well. Well, now you got to wait another 4 years, right? So every opportunity that comes, man, I just wanted to make sure that I did my part to help and do everything that I could, regardless if I was in an individual sport or if I was with my team. I just wanted to make sure that I left my best effort there, and I left my mark. Everybody's mark is different and it feels different, but I just wanted to make sure, man, that I didn't have no regrets, and I put my best foot forward that I could at that time.
Yeah. How did you make sure that you and your teammates connected well and were on the same page?
Man, so, most countries do a whole bunch of relay camps. But honestly, man, we didn't do that much. Like, we probably practiced maybe 4 or 5 times that whole time together, but we just had chemistry. Like, I've been running with Aaron since I was 16, 17 years old. Like that quartet group that we had, we've been running together for a couple years now. So the chemistry was there. We just had to focus on us individually getting faster, because if you individually get faster, the team will get faster. So we clicked a lot sooner, and we clicked much better than most countries, man. So just chemistry. Relay is really about chemistry.
Awesome.
For sure. Great. And, going off of that story, while you were talking about it, I just couldn't get a smile off my face, because it just sounds so surreal. And it just, like, you describing the entire process was just like, because you just see it on TV. You don't know what's going through that head, and I think it must be like an absolutely amazing feeling to be able to get a medal for your country, and be on that page. And you guys were all over the news the next day, and it must have been a surreal feeling. But I'm curious to know, because I know you've been training among these athletes, and obviously me being a sports person, and a sports fan myself, obviously like Usain Bolt, greatest of all time, like in athletics, as they say. Like, and you said you've known him since like you were 15. So what is he like behind the scenes, behind the races?
Yeah, man. On and off, I don't get to see him or talk to him as much, man. But what you see with Bolt is what you get, man. He really is that playful. Like, he really is that joyful. The only thing that I would say is, man, he's I think on paper he's like 6'3", 6'4". Bolt looks like he's 6'7". They need to adjust that little mark right there. He's tall. He's taller than most people think. But he is the greatest sprinter of all time. Period. Being as dominant as he was on the stage that he was for the amount of time that he was, that's hard to beat, man. But he really is that joyful soul on the track and off the track, man.
And you had a quick incident with him too, where you want to talk about that? You had a before the race as well in the locker room.
Oh yeah, man. So we're in the call room, and everybody's serious, right? Everybody's serious. I'm just talking to my teammates, and he comes over and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Man, you ready to run today?" And it was like it wasn't anything of malice. It was just more of just like, man, like, yo, you guys got to bring it. It was kind of a double entendre, because he was like, you got to make sure you guys are ready, and just know that we're here. You got to beat us. You know what I'm saying? So it was all in good fun, man. I have friends on the British team too, and as we're going into the call room, one of my friends came, puts his arm over me and says, "Man, you guys ready to come behind us today?" And I was like, "Oh man," man, it sounds good. We'll see you on the track, right?
For sure.
Awesome.
And what's afterlife like? After the day you win the medal, having those surreal feelings. What's the next day like for yourself, your team, and your guys' family as well, right?
Yeah, man. So we raced at 10:30. We finished, like, we got down to the place where we got like all our stuff probably about like 12:30, because we had to do all these interviews going up these steps. Then we had to come down to the locker room, do all these interviews, and get our stuff. And then we had to do a live press conference with the Jamaicans, the Japanese, and us. So I probably got back to the village, man, at like 4 a.m. And then we had every Canadian news station the next morning. So we're up at 7. And we didn't get back to the village probably until like, 3 p.m. later that day. And, then when you get back to Canada, I was the one out of the guys. Everybody else is from Ontario, from Toronto. And I was the one from Calgary. So, I jumped into doing a whole bunch of interviews, a whole bunch of things. And so did they. And then we combined and we did some more stuff together. It's one of those moments where you just got to seize the opportunity. I did my best to make sure that I shared the experience with everybody who has helped me along the way. I didn't keep the medal for myself. To this day, if I don't bring the medal somewhere, like, I don't look at it. Like, it's in the closet. Like, it's just not a big deal to me. But I know that some people don't get to see it. They don't get to experience it. So I make sure that I bring it with me everywhere that I go, if I know I got to speak or if I'm going to see a crowd. But yeah, man, it was on the go, man. Sleep wasn't really a priority after, because you got so many different things to do.
Yeah.
Great. Do you have it with you right now? Can we see it?
Yeah, man. Let me get that for you.
Because I've never been in the same frame as a bronze Olympic medalist. So,
So
You've
this
probably
is
shown it so many times, though. Yeah.
this is it here. It's got the Rio
Awesome.
on the front, and then on the back, it's got what games, the Olympics. It came inside of a wooden box, but my little sister broke that, but it's okay.
Awesome. And so, after that entire experience, we were talking, and you told me, so you had a huge career shift, right? You kind of, obviously, you said you played in the NFL, the next year for the Tiger Cats, but after that, you made a huge career leap to, becoming a public speaker. So,
Yeah.
walk us into that.
Yeah, man. So again, at 13, like I knew that sports could be a passport for me, but I also knew that God put something else out there for me. I just didn't know what it looked like. So at 20, I would hear things like, Akeem, you're a good listener, or man, you're very eloquent with your words and all these different things. And I said, yeah, but what does that mean? So it was at that time when I went home. And if I wasn't doing sport, I was in the school speaking, I was in the community speaking. And I was like, man, I think this is that feeling that I had at 13. I think this is it. So that's what I did when I wasn't playing sport, man. And for me, I believe that we're all here to serve in some capacity. We just got to dig deep and find what that looks like for us. So for me, I don't look at it as speaking. Like I look at it, okay, this is what God put me to do. This is my life's work, and I got to honor that. And whatever that you think your purpose is, it's going to find a way to come back into your life one way or another. It's just, are you willing to walk into that purpose, or are you just going to stay out of it? But it's going to keep continuing coming back at some point. And this voice just kept coming at me, kept coming at me. And I didn't love track enough to want to stay in it. I did everything that I wanted to do in it and then some. So for now, I said, man, okay, God, I hear you. I hear this voice. I'm going to be obedient, and I'm going to do my best to try to reach individuals who are trying to pursue their goals and their dreams. And I just try to add value to what they have in my own way. So that's why I started talking about perseverance and resiliency, because that's what I know. That's what I've dealt with. That's my life story. So that's how speaking came into play for me.
Fantastic. So, going off of that, so you started getting into public speaking, and now there's lots of people that are saying, Akeem, what are you doing? And so how did you overcome, those naysayers, and, more so, what is the plan for you, going in the future as a public speaker?
Man, I wish that I could say that it was something like deep, but I really just, it's not that I don't care about other people's opinions, but I care more about Akeem's opinion of Akeem than what anybody else thinks about Akeem. If this is what I truly believe that God put me to do, then man, you can't worry about what somebody is going to say. Somebody is always going to say something, whether it's good, whether you're doing something great, whether it's something bad. They're always going to have something to say. But I think the question you have to ask yourself is, do I believe that my reasoning is strong enough to withstand the naysayers and endure the stages? So for me, and everything that I've done with sports, when you're on the stage, at a high stage, 24/7, man, you just learn to have a sharp armor. You just learn to have a strong enough tool set, because you're being ridiculed left, right, and center. You know how many internet coaches there are? There's people who are going to be listening to this right now who says, Akeem, man, I didn't like the way you said this about this star. You should have listened. You're right. But it's not about you. It's about what I believe that I think is right. So for anybody listening to this who is trying to embark on something and people are telling you one thing or another thing, take a moment, take a breath, get to a quiet place and listen to the voice inside of your heart. Because the voice inside of your heart is going to be the one to tell you, look, you can do this. Like, you have an opportunity to do something here. You don't want to get to a point where you're 50, 60 years old, sitting down, and you're like, man, I wish I would have done that. There's nothing as worse as someone who is having regret. We should never live our life in regret, because even when it doesn't go our way, it's still an experience that we can learn from. And you asked, what was it going to look like with the speaking career now, man? So I've been very fortunate enough to have the value of word of mouth. I've been able to work with companies such as Virgin Mobile, alongside Richard Branson, Big Brothers Big Sisters, a lot of corporate work, a lot of universities, um, and I just want to continue to make sure that I deliver a message that resonates to what the environment needs. So for me, I don't know which way God is going to take me. I don't know what stage He's going to put me on. But all I know is whatever stage that He does put me on, I'm going to make sure that I execute them as best as I can and add value to it and make sure I continue speaking life. I love doing, I enjoy doing corporate work and talking about, how you can build a resilient mindset in your company as a collective group. But I love going back to the schools. I remember when I was young, I would hear it all the time. People used to say, man, this generation, they can't do nothing right. They're doing this wrong. They're doing that wrong. And I always said to myself, why do people talk about how dirty something is, but do nothing to clean it up? I don't have time for that. So when I go into the school, you want to change a culture, whatever it is that you want to change, be the change. Be the change first. I like I said, I enjoy doing corporate, man. I love working in there. But my heart is with the schools and making sure that everybody knows that there is endless possibility, but you got to get out of your own head.
Yeah. Did you get to meet Richard Branson?
Yeah, man. So I think there's a picture up on Google. I was sitting right next to him, and I remember I asked him how the event happened. Toronto was doing this thing. Sorry, Virgin Mobile was doing this thing where they were setting up home packages in Toronto, and for every home package sold, they would donate $10 to this foundation. And when I was at the event, I didn't know he was going to be there or not, but when he came down, he tapped me on the shoulder and he says, man, I heard you're the Olympic athlete. And I said, who is talking to me? Because I couldn't see. And I looked around and I was just like, oh man, this is Richard. I've never met him before. But I knew in that moment I had to ask a question. You know what I'm saying? So I said, man, what was the biggest sacrifice that you had to make to get to this point? And I think it caught him off guard because it was a question that he had to think about at that time. And what he said was the biggest thing for him was when he started Virgin Records, when he sold Virgin Records, he had just signed Mariah Carey before Mariah Carey blew up, right? But he also embarked on his airplane business. And he sold Virgin Records to fuel his airline company simply because he said, I didn't want those guys to tell me what I couldn't do. And after that, we went on stage and we, did the interview. We did the panel, and I spoke to him briefly after 2-3 minutes, just thanking him for the opportunity. And a funny thing happened, man, is I asked his team. I said, "Oh, what time is his flight tomorrow? He's probably heading out pretty soon." They said, "What time is his flight?" I said, "Yeah, he didn't come here by boat." He says, "Man, he has a private jet. He can leave whenever he wants." I was like, "Oh, yeah, you can do that when you're the 5th richest man in the world." So, yeah, man. So, that was the experience of Richard there.
Insane. That's awesome.
Fantastic story.
You talked about, kind of escaping your own mind, right? And, kind of getting out of your own comfort zone. But, I feel like a lot of people are very entrapped within, their comfort circle. And, just the feel or just the thought of even leaving that is just terrifying for most people, right? And, you develop this mindset at such a young age, and, nobody can want better for your life except for you, right? But if you're not willing to, step out into that uncomfortable area, how do you expect to grow as a person, right? And so, my advice or my question to you is, how can you, take steps to get over that feeling and, kind of step out of your mind a little bit and, kind of look at, I shouldn't be as scared of, people's opinions, and, I should just care of what I think and what my values are as a person.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, man. One thing I'd say is fear is a liar. I'm gonna use this example. You remember when you used to watch scary movies, right? For example, you go to the movie theaters and you're watching the scary movie, and every time the sound gets higher, something happens, right? Now you were there and you're watching the movie, and it's all fun and games when you're with your friends and you're with people. But then you got to go home. And when you go home, because you watch the scary movie, every sound you hear, you think somebody's coming for you. You're like, that's what I just watched. It's coming to get me. I'm like, yo, so you're in the bed and the sheets are over you and you're just like, man, but then you wake up in the morning and you're like, yo, I'm fine. The reason why I say that is because half the things we think inside of our head is not as bad as it is. It's really not. And when I think about how we operating in a fear, for a practical tip, do one thing is pick one habit and build off of that. How you get out of your comfort zone is all about confidence. When you can build up this one habit extremely well, then you will be able to take that next step in order to reach that goal or that mark that you see. But you got to build up that one habit, because that one thing gives you confidence. If for me, since I'm speaking, if you want to be a speaker, how I started was I started speaking to myself in the mirror every day, every single day. And I started speaking to myself on my way to class. I may have looked crazy, but I was practicing. And I started doing that, and started doing that, and started doing that, and started doing that until I got confidence enough to share a message on social media. So when I was speaking to myself, practicing my speech, practicing what I would say every single day in my preparation, then I took that next step and I started doing small posts on social media. Okay, I posted something, I'm supposed to get ridiculed, but here are these people saying, wow, that's good stuff. Okay, cool, I may have something here. So after I'm speaking to myself and I have now, posted some stuff on social media, okay, well, now the scary part is to go and do it in front of live people. But I've done A and B so many times that I've built up the confidence to do C. So the best thing that I would say, man, is pick that one habit, that one thing that you want to do. Don't think about the end mark. Think about how you can break it down in A and B. And when you do A 50 times, go to B, do that 50 times. Remind yourself, okay, I've done a good job at A, done a good job at B. Now it's time to go C. There is no growth in your comfort zone. If you stay in your comfort zone, you will remain stagnant. Unless you're a rock, you were meant to grow. So you can't think of a rock mindset. Think as a tree mindset. A tree doesn't worry about where it grows. A tree has one job. I'm going to grow. And it just does what it does. But as humans, we have the ability to pick one thought over another. And we can pick a positive thought more than we can pick a negative thought. But every day we got to choose.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Really well said, man. And, going off of that, I feel really inspired. And going off of that, I want you to kind of, as we come towards a close for the podcast, yeah. I'm curious to hear, what your message is to students like us, younger millennials, Gen Zs, and because that's who our content is for. Our goal as game changers is we want to inspire these younger generations with such complex environments to just double down on one thing, find their greatness, and really, make an effort to be the best version of themselves and find, maximum happiness. But I want to hear what you have to say on that in terms of what your message is.
Man, the first thing that I would say, man, it's a mix of both. The one, stay true to yourself. And the second one would say, man, find your gift, right? One, in a world that tries to make us like everybody else, there's a small percentage of people who are truly themselves. Because you're forced, you look everywhere you go, you got to do it this way, you got to do it this way, you got to do it like that, you got to speak like this. No. If God made everybody to be the same and to speak the same, he would do that. That's why we are all different, because there's a purpose inside of you. And the reason I say is your gift is because your gift and your purpose go hand in hand. They're like brothers, right? Everybody on this planet has a gift. Everybody, this is what I believe. Everybody has a gift. There is one thing that God put in your heart, and you have to spend time finding that. Now, how do you find your gift? How do you find that, right? Your gift, to give some practical tips, is the one thing that you do with the least amount of effort that just comes natural. Some of you may be fantastic singers. You may be great artists. You may be good at math. That's your gift. Now, how do you use your gift and operate in your purpose? That's something that you have to seek and you have to search and find. But you have to find your gift. Your gift may look foolish and stupid to some people. But the last time I checked, a person the other day made a killing playing Fortnite. Don't despise small beginnings. Stay true to yourself and spend time finding and digging in your gift, and then cultivate that. And when you cultivate that as high as you can, that is the true definition of living in your purpose.
100%, man. That one really hit home, because I was nodding constantly as you were saying, because I have the same belief that every single person has one greatness in them. Now, what you have to do is finding that greatness, like you said, that comes as second nature to you. That's part of your personal, experiential, receiving and giving values that you've cultivated over your life, and really honing it, and not thinking of it as something that puts you out of the extraordinary or puts you out of the normal, but it's something that makes you special in a positive way. And I think once you shift to that perspective and you find that, and you're at a stage of self-exploration where you know what that gift is that you have, now you can capitalize on it, and now you can really use it as, like you said, make it your purpose, make that gift your purpose, because it is. You just don't know it's your purpose, right? And
100%, man. That's beautifully said.
Thank you. And going off of that, we have one question that we ask every guest who comes on. As being Game Changers podcast, and Game Changers, we call it a lifestyle, we call it a culture, we call it a specific mindset. So for you, if you could describe one trait or one word that really made you a game changer, what would that be?
Oh man, my resiliency. My resiliency, man. Resiliency, the definition of it, to be able to bounce back with a positive attitude. We're all
100%.
resilient. We just got to fix our focus on it. But resiliency, man, that's the one word.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, going off of that, before we end the podcast for today, first of all, I want to say, where can people find you? Because if someone wants to, see where you are on social media and Twitter, Instagram, wherever, this is your chance to kind of really just put yourself out there in that sense.
Yeah, man. On all social media, at Underdog AKH. YouTube is just Akeem HAYNES. My website for all my books and all the bookings, man, is just www.akeeminspires.com, and everything is on there.
And for our viewers who don't already know, Akeem has a podcast as well called Unscripted. And, I encourage all of you guys to go watch it. It's really incredible. He gives tips and advice to propel you towards achieving your dreams. And, I've watched a few episodes myself, and, Akeem, just really amazing work. And
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
You coming onto our platform as well.
Oh, man, it was a pleasure, man.
For sure.
Game Changers means so much. There's so much components to it. So really good on each and every single one of you, man, for sometimes the world doesn't know what they need until they hear what they need. They need this.
Thank you so much. And that's what we're here for, to process, and it's just beginning, right?
Absolutely.
So, want to thank Akeem so much for coming on and being a part and sharing his knowledge, sharing his beautiful energy, and just really had some fun stories that you had to share. had some inspiring stories, and I think you're a really wonderful speaker, and you had us captivated through every word that you said. So want to thank you once again for coming on. Suki and Jaden, if you have some last words.
Yeah, again, I just want to express my gratitude, Akeem. Thank you for coming on our platform and, sharing your words with us. And, I'm sure this is going to, affect a lot of people in our community and, give them a chance to grow as well and escape their comfort zone.
I'm honored, man. Thank you guys for having me, man. I had a good time. Anytime people get an opportunity to connect and to share like minds, man, it's a blessing, man. It's a blessing.
Yeah, man. Definitely. And some of the things that you've said, like, they were fully new concepts to me, or most of it actually, that I've never heard anyone say before. And I feel
good.
like I've learned a lot, and it's gonna have an impression on how I perceive things and go about through my endeavors and when I have challenges and stuff. And I really like your perspective, and it really enticed me.
Man, that's love, man. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I'm glad that I could help in some way, man. It's a great compliment. Right. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, so, Akeem, well, I'm a speaker, a public speaker myself as a life coach. So hopefully maybe I'll see you at a public speaking event. We'll do one together if the universe wants us to.
Absolutely. But it's already out there. It's already out there now.
It's happening. But, thank you so much again for coming on. Thank you to our viewers for listening. And, we hope to see you again soon for the next episode. Until then, stay safe, stay home, and hope you guys stay inspired through isolation. Take care and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.